Thank you. Hi, has someone joined? I think it might be worth telling folks that it's really loud. Or should we just deal with it? Good afternoon. Can anyone hear me? Good afternoon. It looks like there's a couple of people online, but not on the phone. So I'm going to change the screen to the number that you can call in on. Let me find that number. Oh, there it is, right on the top. So if you're having trouble with your mic and with your audio through your computer, please call in this number. Oh, Betsy, I see you're on the phone now.
I am.
Yep.
It's really echoey. Wonder why that is. Oh, I know why. Because I've got audio on my computer too. Figure out how to turn that off.
No, you sound good to us. It must be your computer.
Diane, can you hear me?
Yep, you sound good?
Okay. Okay, am I pretty clear?
Yep.
Okay.
So since it's just us right now, I moved around a few slides, Betsy, just to make it an easier transition and move away some slides that you don't need. So if you look at your email, it tells you when you're going to come in. But it does.
Okay, great.
We have another caller that joined us.
Tamoy.
Hi, Tamoy. How are you this afternoon?
Good, good. I'm just trying to set everything up. So,
Yeah.
because I'm calling in from my phone, but I'm on the computer and I see all of you.
Great. We don't see you yet, though, so when you get your webcam turned on, that would be great.
There you go.
Okay, I'm still looking for your picture coming up, Tamoy. Is your webcam green? Yep, there we go. And you can see me?
Yeah.
Great. And then we also have Natalia. Is that you that's joined? Okay, well, wait a minute. I see a name. I don't hear anything yet. Who just joined us?
Augustina?
Augustina, I can hear you. This is Diane. Welcome. If you have your webcam and can turn that on, that would be great. And we're still waiting for Michelle and Natalia, and Augustina is still waiting for your webcam. It looks like we have another caller on the phone. Who just joins us on the phone?
Natalia?
Great. Natalia, do you have a webcam?
Yes, it looks like it's on, but I don't know if...
Up in the upper right, I'll show you on the screen. There's a area, well, I guess it's not on this screen, but your webcam circle should be green, and if you just click it on and off, you should be able to click yourself on. There we go. Is that Natalia that just joined in the blue and black stripes?
Yes.
Working great. Augustine, are you still with us? Augustina?
Yes, I am. I'm trying to figure out how to open the webcam.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I think I see it. Oh, okay, I did it.
Great. You should pop up then in a second. It should be this little green video camera looking thing that you can click on and off. They don't have you yet, Augustina. Do you see the webcam photo, Augustina? Maybe she shut, maybe we lost her. We'll wait a few minutes. Augustina, are you back with us?
Yes, I am. Can you see me?
No, not yet. Are you seeing your,
Oh, okay, what about now?
no, this, oh, there we
I think I
go.
did it.
Great.
Okay, cool.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was having problems listening to you guys.
No, we're only 2 minutes after 2. I think if everyone is technically there by 5 after the hour, I'm pretty happy. So we're doing fine. So we'll just give Michelle another chance. Okay. Okay, I think we are going to get going. Amy's going to send a quick email to Michelle and see if we can get her on the line. But welcome, everybody. I'm Diane, and I'm going to be doing the first part of our presentation, our training today, and then Betsy and Amy, who will get introduced later, will be joining me. So the first thing I'd like to do is make sure everybody knows how to use their GoToMeeting controls. The first thing and the best thing for you to do, you have a little mic that looks like this on the right-hand side. And if you could click on that and turn it from green to red, that is muting yourself, which is helpful in case there's any background noise or you have anything going on in your house. And then you can just keep clicking it on and off if you want to speak. I don't want to mute anybody. So if you want to speak, you just click that back on and off. Also, if you seem to lose if you don't see your photo in your view, look and see if your green webcam has somehow turned itself off, and you can turn that back on and off. You can also take all these photos. I don't know what your screen looks like, but you can click and drag them to the left or the bottom or the right and kind of get them out of your view so they're not distracting for you. Then you also have a chat bar down at the bottom, and I'm going to show you how it works right now. I'm going to send you all a chat and say, is everyone hearing me? And then you can respond to just me or to everyone. And why don't you change it to just me, the organizer, and send me back a chat and say, yes, I can hear you, or no, I can't hear you. Hopefully everybody will be saying, yes, I can hear you. And it looks like Michelle has joined us. And Augustina's getting her chat. And Natalia's using her chat. And who else? Augustina, Natalia, and then we'll get Michelle rolling. Michelle, can you hear me? Okay, I'll give her a few minutes. Oh, it looks like your mic is working, Michelle. Nope, now it's not working. All right, well, give Michelle a minute, and then I'll check in with her. So it looks like everyone else is doing well with GoTo. And if you're having any GoTo problems, send me an as the organizer whatever GoTo problem you might be having. Now we're going to rock and roll. We're going to hope to go through this in a couple hours. So I want to first thank everybody for coming today to the training. there's a lot that we're going to cover, and there are a lot that we're not going to cover, because you just have to kind of learn on site, and you all are experienced data collectors, and so you know that no matter how much we go over today and how much we train, it's not quite the same as getting through your first day in the field. But we do hope that we meet these objectives today, and that you'll feel more comfortable after you go through this training of how to administer the survey. You have a better understanding of your obligations and the expectations. And you'll see the big picture of what this survey is all about. And so you'll feel good that you're helping kids, because this research in the program that you are working with has a bigger goal of helping kids. We will be looking at the information that it came in your box. So if you have that box available to you, that would be really handy, especially the training manual. We'll just be going through these things as we go along, and this way you can say, oh, I don't see that, or I don't have it, or what piece are you talking about? And you can take notes. There are some note pages at the back of your training manual that you can use for notes. And again, if at any time you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you want to send me as an organizer the question, or if it's hard to interrupt, you can just send a message to me that says, I have a question, and then I can pause and say, Michelle, do you have a question? Speaking of Michelle, can you hear okay, and are you online?
Yes, I'm online.
Great, welcome. Do you have a webcam available?
Yes, yeah.
So there's a green circle with like a video camera icon in the middle of it, and clicking on and off that will click your webcam on or off. And sometimes it takes a couple tries for it to kind of click in. So kind of keep working on that, and we'll see when you show up. Do you see all of us?
No, I can't.
Okay, it's probably the same webcam. But as you're working on that, I'm going to kind of move along.
Okay.
So you are part of a larger team. You don't see all of the team members, but just to know kind of who all the players are and to understand your part in it. The Gear Up is the program that you are working with, and it stands for Gaining Early Access and Readiness for Undergraduate Programs, and it's basically a U.S. Department of Education program for low-income students to help them prepare and succeed to go on to some kind of college or university or technical training, something post-secondary education. So that is the larger program that you're working with. And then the Department of Education contracts with Apt Associates, and they're the larger organization that is conducting the national research on evaluating this program. This program's been going on in the schools, and now they want to see how it's doing, basically. And then Apt Associates contracts with us, Survey Research Management, and that's who I work for and you work for, and we are implementing the field data collection. So that's the kind of up and down of it. And a little bit of introduction. As I mentioned, I'm Diane, and there's two other project coordinators, Betsy and Amy. So Betsy and Amy, you're on right now. Why don't we start with Betsy, and you can introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. I can.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us and agreeing to return to yet another SRM project that took a little while to get off the ground and get you all the details you need. But I guess I'm introducing myself. I've been with SRM for 7 years, and we're pretty excited about this project. It's one of the biggest number of respondents that we've had in any of the studies we've worked on. So we're, like I said, grateful to have strong returners. California has a lot of students, so hopefully we'll be keeping busy and getting some great response rates. So thanks for bearing with all the communication coming at you, and we should be cruising in the field soon.
Amy?
hopefully it's not too echoey. Diane and I share an office, so you might pick up my microphone and hers, but I think I've worked with each of you at this point. I've been with SRM for 3 years now. See, I've touched on this particular project. I think every year that I've been with SRM, I started with the pilot and worked a little bit with it last year, and I'm excited to see it now growing and becoming, like Betsy mentioned, a very large project. I'm excited to work with you all again.
Great. And, it's difficult for me to tell if Amy's mic sound is on because I'm sitting right next to her. But I hope that everyone, if you didn't hear her, let us know right now. Good, everything was working there. So if we can go around the room, and I'll just kind of call off your names so that we all don't start at once, and introduce yourself and your experience with data collection, maybe a little, just a minute about that and about yourself. And why don't we start with Augustina?
Okay, hi. Sorry if it's a little loud. I'm actually in Starbucks right now.
No, it's not loud for us, or not for me.
Okay. I have a lot of background in education, but with this data collection, I think I've been with SRM since 2015, so this is going to be my second year, and I absolutely love it. I was with the transitional kindergarten program. That was really fun. I'm looking forward to the study.
Great. Tamori?
Hi guys. I've been doing research for like 9 years since I graduated from college, and I've been with SRM since our Pixie study like 8 years ago, 7.5 years ago. So yeah, I'm just ready to go out on the field and do what we do.
Great, great. Natalia?
Hi, I've been with SRM since about 2014, working on different projects, the TK program and the classroom observer.
Great. And Michelle?
I've been with SRM since 2014, and I've done the TK assessments as well as doing classroom observations, and so this is my third year with SRM.
Great. And if you're still working on your webcam, Michelle, I'd still love to see ya. I'm going to continue on. Real quickly, a little bit about the Gear Up study. The goal of the study is to better understand college advising, to integrate new strategies, to increase the college enrollment, and they're investigating a new text messaging strategy as part of college advising. The design of the study, about 11,400 seniors in 62 schools. We have active sites, active consent sites, and passive consent sites. And Betsy's going to talk more about that. And basically, your passive consent site, a notification was sent to the parents. And if they did not want their child to participate, they contacted us and told us no. An active consent site, a notification was sent to the parent, and they had to actively say yes. So how you administer the survey is going to be influenced, or that's going to have an influence on your administration. We do this administering the survey on site, and then we do makeups in all different ways to make up surveys for the students that you could not reach that day you were there. The process is pretty simple, of course, but then there's all sorts of things that change and all sorts of what-ifs. Basically, the survey process, you have once the survey is in the student's hands, it should take them about 15 minutes using a pen or pencil and writing right on the survey. The students that are eligible to take the survey are in Gear Up, and they are expected to graduate this spring. And all schools have at least one main survey day. Some have more, and then scheduling makeup days. And SRM is Survey Research Management, and PCs are the project coordinators, Betsy, Amy, or myself. We help with scheduling, or we schedule with the Gear Up contact the makeup days. So to keep in mind the big picture of the goals of doing this type of surveying, I like to think of the acronym of ICE. It helps me remember what what's important. And the I stands for integrity, C stands for confidentiality, and the E stands for the environment. And you have all done some data collection before, so I'd like you to tell us. You can take yourself off mute, or you can use the chat, whichever is more comfortable. If you're sitting at Starbucks, you might want to use the chat wherever you're at. And give me some of your thoughts on what does integrity have to do with surveying? What does confidentiality have to do with surveying? And what is the environment? In just a minute, so just pick one of those and throw out what you think these mean as they relate to doing data collection.
Well, I'll go first. Are we using the chat, or can I just speak into this?
You can just speak. Yep.
Okay, for integrity, I mean, when we go out and when we're collecting data, we can't be biased to the observation. We have to just collect what we see. So, for instance, if we're doing surveys, we have to make sure that the survey is not being tampered with by anybody else, that once we collect the data, it's stored in a secure place for confidentiality. And then for the environment, are we talking about where we're surveying? Just making sure that...
You can talk about anything you want right now. So this is just whatever you think it might be. There's no wrong answer.
Okay. Well, for the environment, making sure that there's no outside stimulus that's making these students feel like they're rushed or so the environment stays standardized in a sense.
Great. Anybody, let's hear some thoughts from other folks. Any other ideas of integrity, confidentiality, or environment? I also have to pick on somebody.
I think for environment, making sure that everyone is safe and there's no distractions, confidentiality, not breaking it, and integrity and not being biased or prejudiced.
Anybody else have something?
So I think for environment is to try your best. I know it's not always possible, but to try to have the environment to best serve, the survey, and confidentiality to make sure the participants are comfortable enough to respond honestly. And integrity, I think they both go hand in hand with integrity also, making sure that you're following the instructions appropriately to make sure that the study is effective and reliable.
Great. Michelle, any ideas?
For integrity, I would say just following like SRM protocols and confidentiality, not sharing any information with other people besides work and the environment, just making sure the students are safe in the environment that they're in.
Great, perfect. And if you guys want to mute yourselves again, we won't have to worry about the background noise. And basically, I think you've hit all of these. And what's important, especially for first-time data collectors, is to understand why these little details are so important. And I think you guys hit on all of these. So you can take a quick look at up there and see if there's anything we didn't hit on. But I think you guys are spot on. Okay, before we move into the actual process and the materials, are there any questions about the survey itself, the Gear Up, or any of the research goals? And again, you can either take yourself off chat or yes.
So Diane, I couldn't actually hear you for I know for one of the bullet points that said passive versus
active.
Was it passive and not passive or something like that?
Yeah, there's passive consent and active consent. And
there you go. Yeah.
Those are the two different ways that the parents give consent for their students to do that. And since Betsy's going to be talking quite a bit about that later, all you need to know for now is those are two different ways of giving consent, and then we'll go into that later. Any other questions? Okay, so if you have your box that was shipped to you, now is a good time to take a look in it and make sure we shipped you what you need and that you know how to use everything. So the big thing in your box is your binder. Looks like this. Then you have a tote bag to put everything in. You should have a tie-back envelope of unlabeled surveys. And then you have a tie-back envelope of consent forms. And those, I'm getting something. Those have a green cover sheet, some like this, just a half, a green cover sheet. Sorry, in English and Spanish with 2 pieces of paper behind it. So those, the 4 things that you see up on your screen, does anybody not have any one of those or have a question of what's what? Great, there's a little static, so make sure everybody's on mute. Mary, I think that might be you. There we go, thank you. Okay, now let's specifically look in your binder. Maybe that's not Moy. Does anyone else here sound like a, I think Michelle. Michelle, can you put yourself on mute?
Okay. Do I press the little orange button?
You press the orange mic.
Oh, the orange mic.
Yeah. There you go. Nope.
Okay.
Well, it's probably green, actually. It's green because you're on, and then when you press it, it'll turn into red. It looks like a...
I'm having some technical difficulties with mine.
Okay.
So, with my laptop.
Okay. Okay, we'll keep working. So in your, if you want to message her. Yeah, thank you. In your binder, you have a pouch of pens and pencils. If you want to follow along with me, you have our contact information on a nice green hard piece of paper. And the rest of it should kind of flow more or less as you need it. So the first tab gives you this lengthy training manual, which goes into details the things that we are talking about today. And then that ends with a blue or green piece of paper. A procedural guide is after that, and this is basically just a checklist of what happens from the moment you are starting a survey or before the survey date to wrapping up the survey. Kind of condenses what's in the manual and gives you an easy way to check off. Then in a sleeve, and some people are missing this, so make sure your next piece of paper is in an orange piece of paper in a sleeve. That's your survey script. If you don't have it, just message me, which is the best thing to do. And that's all your surveying stuff. Tab 2, you have a bunch of white pieces of paper that say survey name labels from surveys, because these are the pieces of paper that you use when you pull a student's name off a survey. You just stick them on these pieces of paper. You have some blue pieces of paper that is going to help you organize your bundle of surveys. And then the third tab has to do with makeups. You have, and these are materials, most of them you're going to be leaving with the Gear Up contact for them to do makeups. And one of the sleeves that says Agreement to Protect, you get their signature and you collect it. But that whole section has to do with makeups, and we'll talk about those later. That's basically your binder. It's a good way to keep everything together that you need. Okay. Moving on. Now there's some materials that are shipped to the schools, and they were shipped to the Gear Up contact, and that is the school staff member who is the contact for the Gear Up program and who you will be working with. They've received the actual student surveys. They've received pencils. They've received, in some cases, return notification letters. I don't think your parents have. And then they've received the FedEx labels and materials. to ship back for you to ship back the surveys and the rosters to us. So they have received some materials that you will actually be using. But so that's good to know that they have those. And that'll be something that if you are the lead SA in that school, you may be opening the box. They may have not even opened it yet and working with it, or they may have opened it, but you're the person administering it or dealing with what's in the box. And you will get a notification of where that box is located in the school, the name of the Gear Up contact, and who has that. So briefly what the day is going to look like, and you may have multiple days. You arrive, you find the box, you distribute materials. If you have other, SA stands for Survey Administrator, that's you. If there's more than one survey administrator at a school, one of you will be the lead, and the lead distributes the materials to the other survey administrators. Once the students arrive, the survey administrators go to the different, or before the students arrive, the survey administrators will go to the different areas. You administer the survey, you organize the survey afterwards, and you do some paperwork. You basically are not doing that paperwork while the students are taking the survey, because as was mentioned, it's important for you to watch that the students are taking the survey and help them if they need it. And then you close out with all of the survey administrators, and the lead is responsible for making sure that closeout happens appropriately and gets everything done that needs to get done. And then the lead will be shipping the surveys back to us that day. So it's a pretty busy day, and it sounds like you are all used to that. Again, you've worked with us before, but we always like to just mention, and there's a few more pages of this in your manual of how to dress and what to wear and what to leave at home. And you want to be comfortable and you want to be respectful. Pretty common sense type of things. Okay, we mentioned a few things that you might be having some questions about, and hopefully this will clear it up. So the first thing that happens is now that you've been hired, and congratulations, you're going to receive an email about your specific assignment. And you want to make sure, and that assignment email has the date, the time, and the location. So you get one of those, you'll get multiple emails if there's multiple schools. And you have to confirm that you received and you're accepting that assignment for each time, not just the first time, or not just, yes, I said I'm going to work for you all. Each time you get one of these assignment emails, it's important that you reply and confirm that that date and time works for you. And then you get another email that has what we're calling a school cover page. And this basically has all the information you will need, or we're hoping it has all the information that you will need about your school. It includes the details about arrival, who your school contacts are, where the sessions are, how many sessions there are, what other survey administrators are with you, and you definitely want to print this and put it in your binder. It's not in your binder now because we wait till the day before or 2 days before to get all this final information from the schools, and you already have your binder, but you want to print it and put it right in front of your binder there. This is basically what it looks like. So you're going to look and see, are you a lead administrator for this school on these dates? And if you have multiple schools, you may be the lead administrator on one school and not on another. So however the scheduling works out, this may switch around. What time are you going to arrive on those days? Your arrival time is, of course, before your session time. So keep that in mind. That is the time that you should be arriving. Where to check in, where to park, how many boxes you're going to find there, where you're going to find those boxes. You have the school address, and you'll want to, look up on MapQuest or some mapping device beforehand so you know where you're going and how long it'll take you to get there, where the sessions are, when the student, and then any notes basically that during our scheduling we've asked them and they let us know. They're going to call the students down, the students need to leave by a certain time, so on and so forth, and some information about makeups. So this is a very important cover page that you want to make sure that you get before you go and that you print out. So talking about the lead survey administrator, they have some additional roles and responsibilities for that school when you are the lead at a school. And we mentioned that you're in charge of meeting with the other SAs and handing out their rosters, their surveys to them. You're going to say, we're going to meet back. Sometimes you meet back at the Gear Up office. Sometimes you might meet back somewhere else. You'll talk to the Gear Up contact and figure out where you're all going to meet afterwards. You're going to talk to the Gear Up contact and confirm that everything still looks the same as it does on your cover page. And if there's any students not assigned to a session, which usually, from what I've seen so far, there's maybe four to six students that don't seem to be assigned to a session. So you can ask them what's the best way we can survey them and talk to them about that process. And then on the last day, you're going to talk to them about makeup plans, and we'll go more into that later. And then you coordinate with the other SAs. You collect all their surveys, you look at their rosters, and then you ship the surveys to Survey Research Management that day, and then when you get home, you complete online a little survey gizmo that asks you about what you shipped to us. So please be prompt when you arrive. And we ask that you try and kind of enter the school together. If you can meet right out front or right inside, just so there's not one person and then 5 minutes later another and another. So, when possible, try and meet as a group and go in as a group. Keep in mind that your impression that you give the school is the impression that they have of SRM and of the study. And we talked a little bit about the other responsibilities of the lead essay when you arrive. So distributing the materials and if there aren't any other essays, if you're the only survey administrator, you're distributing this to yourself, or you're finding this information for yourself. The surveys are already organized by, if there's sessions, like there's 4 homeroom sessions, you'll have room 104, surveys go here, room 204 go here, room 304 go here, and there'll be an essay with each one of those bundles. Some may be surveying 100 kids in one session, and in that case they are alphabetized. So you can say you got A through M and you have N through Z. But they are organized as best as we can here in the office, anticipating what you might need when you get to the school. There is a copy of the master roster, which are all of the students, and there's a copy of that for every survey administrator. If you're breaking up into sessions, there's also a copy for the session roster for that session. So if there is sessions and I'm in room 104, I have a roster for session in room 104, and I have a master roster. I'm only going to use my session roster when I'm handing out the surveys, because those are the kids that I have. But I will be referring back to my master roster for some reference, so that's why I have that. If it's one big group, all you have is a master roster. This is an example of a master roster, and it will just be alphabetical, and it doesn't say where or what time. This is an example of a session roster. If your session roster and your master roster is one, then your master roster will include the location and the time. This is a complete date, so this is where you will write the date of the survey when you give the survey to the student or afterwards. But that way you know that survey had been given to the student and received, and then if there's any notes to talk about that student. I guess we can talk about this here. There's a little information on the bottom of your survey that kind of helps you make a decision quickly. And Betsy's going to talk a little bit more about this when she gets into passive and active consent. But there may be a time where a student comes up to you to get a survey and you don't have a survey for them. You don't have a survey that has their name on it. And that's when you, if they're eligible and if we've received consent, and we'll go into those ifs later, but that's when you use those unlabeled surveys, or those blank labeled, I should call them, because they do have a label on them, but they're blank. So that's when you use those blank label surveys. And Betsy's going to go through how you figure out if they're eligible, and hopefully it'll be a quick couple questions because you'll be having a lot of students at one time wanting to give them surveys. Again, kind of went over this. So when you have more than one survey, you'll have more than one envelope in that box. And there's a label that looks like this on every survey. And then you have a package that you have from your box, not the school box, that has, I think 50 we gave you of unlabeled, blank labeled surveys. Let's see. So you'll distribute your surveys to your students and ask them right away not to begin. Of course, if you wait till they sit down, they may have started. So make sure they understand before you hand them the survey not to begin. And then you will read your student survey administrator script verbatim. And you guys hit this spot on when we talked about environment and integrity, to make sure everybody has the same experience across all these 62 schools. I don't even know how many classrooms. Everybody has to do, we try and have all the survey administrators do the same thing as much as possible in every single site. Okay, so adding students to a session. If a student, let's see, so this is when, going back to the point I had before, you have a student comes up to you and they give you their name and you don't have a labeled survey with their name on it. First thing that's good to do is look at, they're not on your session roster. So look on the master roster, and if they're there, then they're probably just in the wrong room, but you know that they're good to go. But you don't want to send them to another room because you know what happens when a kid gets in the hallway. They may or may not make it to that other room. So if you have them there, you're going to survey them. So you give them one of these blank labeled surveys. Well, first thing you're going to do is see if you have access to their survey that has their label. Maybe another SA is right next to me, and I can say, hey, do you have Edgar Gomez's survey? And they say, yeah, and there you go. If you don't, so give the student their labeled survey, and then write on your session roster that they were in room 104 and not in room 204. But most chances you don't have access to their labeled survey because the other SA is probably gone and in another room, and the amount of time and chaos it would take to find them it would cause more problems than it's worth. So then in that case you're going to give them one of these blank labeled surveys, and you're going to copy the information from the master roster onto your session roster, their name and their information. You give them that survey to complete, and then at the closeout is when you work with the paperwork, find their original survey that has their name on it. Now you have their survey that they actually did use, and put them together. So kind of common sense stuff. But again, this gives you some ideas to think about beforehand, so you don't have to be thinking through this when you've got 40 kids in front of you. Now this is when, only when you know that the student is on the master roster. That's what an unlabeled survey looks like. Has no name, and you're going to fill out the school, you're going to fill out the state, you're going to ask the student for their date of birth, and you're going to put the initials in here as clearly as you can. Now, the other situation could be that the student's not on the master roster. So you don't see this student's name on your session roster or on the master roster, but they're coming up to you and they're saying, can I have a survey? So you're going to ask them a couple questions. You're going to say, are you graduating? Do you expect to be graduating this spring? And they might, I don't know, whatever, that's why we have the expect to. If they've got a class hanging or whatever, that's fine, as long as they expect to graduate this spring. And then do you quickly assess that they can sit down and take the survey independently? If they need special assistance, then they're not eligible to take the survey. Betsy's going to get into a little more consent stuff, but I'm going to leave it at here for now. And then you basically go through the unlabeled or blank labeled survey process that we talked about before. And if they're not eligible, they can't complete it without special help, or they're not graduating, you just let them know that the survey is not for them, and ask them to return to their class if that's appropriate, or sit quietly if they can't go anywhere somewhere else. During the survey, you circulate the room, you answer questions, ensuring that there's a quality survey environment. You collect the completed surveys, and then you dismiss the students as instructed on your cover page. These are a few ideas that you had, and a few more about creating a good environment. Students should work alone. I think that was a whole lot, so I'm going to pause here, and before we talk about organizing once the students have left. And of course, at any time you can ask questions, but it's always good to take a little pause and take in all of that information and see if you have any questions. Okay, you are all our pros at this. So after the students have left, you have all these surveys, and while you're still at the school, it's important to do some reconciling with the session rosters and some organizing. You have to do that when everyone is still together, all of the essays and the Gear Up contact, and before you leave the school while everything is fresh in your minds and you have everybody there. So you're going to look at all your surveys, and if you might have done some organizing while you were collecting them, but you may not have been able to do that. So first you're going to separate your surveys into the completed and the not completed, and this basically means that we're not talking about fully completed, because students can leave questions blank if they want. Completed means you gave it to the student and they gave it back to you. Not completed means you never handed out the survey. And then under not completed, there can be categories under there. never will complete is basically you know for sure the Gear Up contact told you that the student is gone, they're not at the school, and they're, for one reason or another, that they are gone, and we will never be able to get that survey into that student's hands. Another reason might be they're just not there that day, and they'll be there tomorrow, and hopefully we can make it up at a later date. And a third, maybe similar to the making up at a later date, but it won't happen at school, and it's something that survey research management might have to follow up on. So if you can break them up into these categories, that's great. If two of these categories, like the on-site makeup and SRM, you're not sure yet which one that goes under, that's fine. Just do as much organizing as you can. And we have bundle sheet covers to help you with that. So you can circle the category and put, I have 20 completed, I have 10 incompleted, I have one that will never be complete. And those bundle sheets will help you do that organizing. And rubber bands. Within each one of these groups, use the student ID number. You can't alphabetize them because you no longer have the students' names on there. You have peeled off the label within the label of student names and put them on that blank label sheet. So you will organize them by student ID number. If you haven't already written the survey completion date on the roster, you just write that in. And then this helps you reconcile. You have 20 kids on your rosters, and you wrote down that 20 kids have completed, and then you should have 20 surveys. You have 22 kids on your roster, you wrote 20 have completed, you should have 20 completed surveys and 2 that fall into one of the other categories. So that's going to be the reconciling that you do to make sure your rosters and your surveys match up. And then you're going to keep all those completed session surveys in a secure place until the closeout meeting. This may be your closeout meeting, or maybe there's another session that you need to go to. And the closeout meeting is that day's closeout meeting, not this. Each day you do this. And then the lead, before leaving the survey location, collects all these surveys after you've reconciled all this that I was mentioning, verifying that the counts all match and all of the names have been removed from the surveys and placed on the label sheet. And then the lead collects the name label sheets from all the other SAs and their session rosters. So if you're not a lead, the only thing you should be leaving the school with, it will be the stuff that came in your essay box for you to use another day. But the surveys and the rosters all should go to the lead. That seems right. A lot of this has to do with confidentiality, and some of the, we don't, removing the labels, we don't ship the rosters and the surveys in the same package. We ship them in different packages. And you mentioned about this in our little confidentiality talk. So that's a lot about surveying and that survey day and the organizing and the closeout. We're going to talk after this about doing makeup procedures, and I'm going to let Betsy talk about the makeup procedures. So before Betsy comes on, again, let's pause and see if you have some questions about administering the survey, collecting the surveys, organizing the surveys.
We're giving them exactly 15 minutes to do these surveys, right? If they're not done, they're not done?
No, they can take as long as you have for that session.
Okay, perfect.
And the teacher's there. You're not timing the survey, but we just say it's about a 15-minute paper and pencil survey.
Okay.
Any other questions? Let me see what the, yeah.
Yeah, so do you know about how many students at a time we will be having, or does that, I guess, range depending on?
I can answer that, Diane.
Okay, great. And then I will move the I'll move the presenter off to you while you are talking about that.
Okay. It will be in the LA and Anaheim area and the San Fernando Valley. You'll mostly be working in classrooms where I think there should just be about 30 students approximately. But there are some cases where the school has elected to have a larger group session. The largest one so far in the area is 100 and a little over 100. There might be 130 on the roster, but I know there won't be that many attending because a lot of them are ineligible, but we're going to wait and learn the precise reason why on site. So in short, Augustina, I'd say the max will be 100, and I would put 3 of you together in a group that large to help really get everybody organized as quickly as possible. But if you're in a classroom, I've just assigned one person, one survey administrator, to a classroom of approximately 30.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that we can actually have more than one person for, if it surpasses 100, it can get crazy.
Yeah, and there will be support from the school as well. I think you'll find that at least one, if not 2 people from the school Gear Up program are going to want to be involved. And so they'll probably help you pass out surveys if possible, which it could be tricky in a consent site, which you'll learn why momentarily. But they can certainly help you collect the surveys and dismiss the students and identify the students. So I think you'll find that it varies school to school.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, great. So I'll just jump right into meeting with the Gear Up contact here. So what you have been receiving so far are some what we're calling the cover page with the details of sessions that we've scheduled. And in most cases, you should see that I've also scheduled a makeup session. And in some cases, there'll be another session the following day, just another main session. So the first thing to do when you're meeting with the lead is have that paper in front of you and confirm the following day's session or the next upcoming session and confirm the arrival time. Adjust anything necessary about how you arrived and checked in and where you went according to the advice of that Gear Up coordinator if that comes up. On the final day that is scheduled at a school, so once you reach the end of that list of scheduled dates from your cover page that SRM has planned with the school, then we want to pass the reins to you to keep going with the makeups. And here's some steps of how you can take care of following up with makeups. And this is for the lead administrator at that school, which should be clearly marked in your cover page. So we'd like the lead, when you're sitting down with that Gear Up contact, the first thing you really want to do is identify exactly what student or which students do we still need to survey and can we survey. So our suggestion is you have the physical incomplete surveys in front of you, the ones that are labeled with student names and were never completed. You never saw the student while you were on site and put it in their hands. Go through those surveys one by one and let the Gear Up coordinator give you an updated status about that student. So in many cases, it might just be that student has been absent this week or that student was absent today. But in some cases, they're going to say that student is failing, they won't be graduating, so they're not in this class anymore. Or that student is in a self-contained classroom, we can't survey them. That student left this high school and now moved out of state to Texas. So for those statuses that we consider final in the sense that we will never have access to this student, we'd like you to write their status directly on the survey. So you could write student moved, student unable, students in special ed, whatever it might be that the Gear Up coordinator has told you. And we also want you to write that information on your master roster. So you might be doing both at the same time. You might do some of this reconciling on your own, you know, depending on how much time this person can meet with you when you sit down. But we find it really helpful to have those statuses written directly on the survey for your sorting purposes and for ours. So you can set those aside. And what you should be left with while you're sitting there is the pile where they said that student was just absent. And we would really recommend, let's see, I'm just trying to, there we go, that your number one approach for completing undone surveys would be to return to the school. And of course, that might not always be okay with the school or the Gear Up contact, but what we'd like to put in your hands is bringing up that suggestion, knowing your own calendar and schedule, letting them know when you could return if they were willing to call those students, say, to the library on a rolling basis, or try to gather them in some other way where you could capture them all together. That has shown to be the most effective way to follow up with a survey for an absent student. Once you remove yourself from the equation, we have a lot harder time getting in touch with that student because it's just us on our phones in Boulder trying to reach those Gear Up coordinators, or possibly just trying to reach the student directly by phone. So we really appreciate your physical presence there and your negotiating to return to the site if you see inroads for that happening. So you can schedule yourself to go back to the school and let your project coordinator know that you've done that, and just let them know the plan that you've come up with when you're giving them a summary at the end of the day. Another option, and this is a good one for if there's just a couple of students left and the coordinator says those students are really hard to track down, they only come to school every other week, you should just leave those surveys with me. I'll find them. We have found that to happen in schools before. So what we do in that case is we will leave the blank surveys and we'll leave what we call a security envelope with each survey. And those envelopes, I forget, I think might be in the school boxes. So I don't think you've seen them yet. But once you get to a school and you open up a box, you'll see some 10 by 13 white envelopes with big labels on them that are laying out instructions for a student on how to complete and return this survey in an anonymous fashion. So the idea behind that is the Gear Up coordinator should never see the data from that student, and the student should feel very confident that their answers are not going to be seen by that person. So that's why we provide the envelope, one per survey you're leaving behind. You should also, at that time, if this option is preferred or by the Gear Up coordinator, pull out an instruction sheet from your binder. There's a survey makeup instruction sheet, and go over that. It's basically just outlining the steps of how a Gear Up coordinator would take into their own hands the distribution and collection of surveys in the standardized and confidential fashion. Arrange a date to return to pick up those completed surveys. That's kind of in keeping with what I was saying before about keeping yourself in the equation. It sounds a lot more efficient, you know, really, and cost effective to say, here's a FedEx envelope and drop them in a FedEx box. But again, then if we don't have a plan for you to return and physically pick them up, our chances that we might lose those surveys starts to increase, because it can be hard to get the busy Gear Up contacts to find time to go drop those surveys. So, and that's again on your own calendar, and of course it's paid all time and mileage, but you would set it up based on what you already know your schedule is for this project and otherwise. If that's not an option, or they're really feeling like they prefer not to have you come back again to the school, to their office, you can leave a FedEx return pack with a label. And just you'll probably stay in contact with them, and SRM, your PC, might also get involved if you let us know, and it's hard to get them to return that. So we'll just stay on top of them together. We'll come up with a plan if we don't see that FedEx package start traveling fairly soon. Let's see. What you want to collect a completed and signed agreement to protect from the Gear Up contact. That is a document that is inside your binder. So whenever a Gear Up staff member is going to do something as involved as this, to distribute a survey and pick up completed data and hold it for you, they need to sign this contract to agree that they won't look at the data, essentially. And leave with them the document called Survey Administration Security Procedures. So all of those documents should be side by side in your binder, and it might seem like a lot at first, but hopefully after your first meeting, when this comes up, it'll be pretty clear. Your checklist lays all of this out as well. Okay, so once all of the on-site efforts are exhausted, once you've gone back as many times as they'll allow it, you've put surveys in the hands of the coordinator, and they've said, I've done my best, it's not happening. Then the surveys will come back into the hands of SRM, either the physical blanks, if you have them, which ideally you still have them in your hands, or you let us know which surveys have not been completed and won't be because the efforts on site are done. And so then what we do from here, just for your information, is we will call the students at home and attempt to complete the survey over the phone. We'll email the students an online link to complete the survey online, and we'll probably put their paper survey in the mail with a return envelope and ask them to return it. So we'll try those three approaches to reach a student who was not able to be reached in their home site. And that's just something for you to know. It could come up with your Gear Up coordinator. You might let them know that that's where ultimately the makeups go, because in some cases you'll learn of a student, a specific case where an approach like this would probably be the best one to start with. So you kind of use your own judgment in discussing with the Gear Up coordinator to figure that out. If a student was sick and at home for a long time, then you might let them know, well, we can email this student a link, and they might know the student well enough to say, oh yeah, Cassie would definitely do it online if you just email it to her. And so you can make that call, write it on your roster, return the survey to us, let us know that that'll be the next step. I'm giving you lots of examples, and like Dan has mentioned, all of these things won't come up every single time, but at least now you've heard some of these things, and you'll be prepared to equip yourselves or equip the Gear Up coordinator with these options for the different scenarios you find yourself in. And I think that's the end of the makeup plans. Anybody have questions about what that might look like? All right, you all look like you know what you're going to do. It's confidence building. All right, Diana, I'll pass it back over to you.
Great. Let's see what we have next. I think we're going to shipping. Okay, so at the end of the day, you're ready to ship your surveys. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to be, when you get home that evening, you're going to be answering, oh, let me turn my webcam back on. You can see me talking. You're going to be answering some questions about what you shipped, and so you want that information handy. And so before you ship your the surveys are shipped every day. So even if you're going back to a school or if you have makeup plans, whatever completed or finalized surveys, if they're never going to be completed on site, you're going to ship them that day. The lead is. The rosters and the name label sheets are shipped when a school is complete. You're going to double check that the name portions are removed from the survey labels. This is a good time to, they should have already done that, but this is a good time to have to double check. Unless, of course, the survey is going to be used. So these are the completed surveys. And you're going to look through your bundles and double check that everything is bundled up correctly. This is the information, and you have all this in your training manual. So this is the information that you're going to have to write down after you ship the package. So you don't want to ship this information away with your package and then say, oh, I wish I would have counted the surveys or written down this information, because you won't have your package anymore. So your FedEx tracking ID number and the FedEx labels are provided for you, but you do need to go to the FedEx, you do need to drop them off at your nearest FedEx drop-off point, which is something that you should find out where that is and write that down before you go to the school. How many surveys are in each category, how many are completed, how many are not completed, and such, what the session ID numbers are, and how many add-on students are included. Those would be the students that were not on your roster and did not have surveys. And then when you get home that evening, ideally before 8 o'clock Mountain Time, which would be before 7 o'clock your time, so it does mean that you might have to get to wireless or some type of data area before you have dinner. You're going to use this link, which will be emailed to you also. You don't need to write it down right now. And that's going to look like this quick one-pager where you let me just move this down. Tell us who you are, what day you shipped it on, and describe the contents of your package. FedEx, school name, is it a package of surveys or of rosters? It should never be both. Session ID number, or if it's a makeup day, how many total completes, how many total others, and how many students were added. So that way we know what's coming and we know what to expect. And you have it as organized as best you can so that when we open it, we kind of know what we have there, just like we're trying to organize on this end. So when you open the box, it's as standard as possible. This is in your manual, and it just kind of helps what to ship, how to ship it. Everything's there for you, and when to ship it. An important wrap-up is surveys that are completed or are never to be completed are shipped every day. Makeup sessions are shipped once all the makeup sessions are done, and the rosters and name label ships are shipped when the makeups and you're completed at that school. So it could be a lot of going to FedEx. Let's see. Somebody just got taken off mute. I think it's Starbucks. Augustina, did you get taken off of mute?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that one more time?
It sounds like somebody got taken off of mute who is in a busy place. There we go. That's better. Maybe not. Augustina, can you hear me?
Yeah.
There we go. Anybody have any questions about shipping? And then I think it's time to, yep. Amy, are you with us?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to put that on you and give you, whoops, give you control. You should be good to go.
Diana, prevent echo. You might need to mute yourself.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. So I think you all are pretty familiar with how payroll works at SRM, so I'll try to be brief with this. It's going to be the usual. You'll be paid for up to an hour reading the training manual that we sent, and your time for this training, as well as administering the survey and your time driving to and from survey administration sites, and your mileage is also reimbursed for driving to and from those sites at the government rate, which I believe is 35.5 cents per mile now, or I'm sorry, 53.5 cents. And you'll be emailing all of those to this email address here, gearuptimesheets@gmail.com. And we'd like to see those submitted by 8 p.m. Mountain Time on Fridays so that we can get right on processing them and get them in time for payroll. And as usual, pay for timesheets goes out on the 5th of each month or the following business day if it falls on a weekend or holiday. So for example, for the month of February, it starts on February 1st and ends on the 28th, and so you'll need to submit a timesheet on the 28th for those 2 days that are kind of middle of the week, and then the check will be mailed on March 6th because the 5th is a Sunday. And then you'll start another timesheet for March 1st, which is a Wednesday. So March 1st through Friday will have its own timesheet. Okay. And let's see if this will progress for me to the next slide. There we go. So this is, and then expense and checks will be lumped together with your mileage reimbursement, and those will go out around the 20th of each month. So you'll submit your expenses weekly for the month of February, and then your expense check will go out around the 20th of March for February's expenses and mileage. And this is all in your training manual if you ever have a question or aren't sure, and you can always contact your project coordinator as well. Timesheets and mileage forms, as usual, only 1 week per form, please, and all entries must be in chronological order, so keep a clear record of that as you're accruing the time, and then you won't run into any trouble. And let's see, use the drop down for the AM and PM on the timesheet form. It's a little fickle. It needs them to be capitalized, so either make sure to capitalize AM, PM, or use the drop down, otherwise you're going to get a pop-up. If you are using those forms and you see a red cell, it needs your attention before we can submit it. So make sure you check on that. Either there's a problem with the time you've entered or you haven't signed and dated. So red cells mean they need your attention. Yellow cells to us look like unusual entries that you should maybe double check. But you can still send them in. For example, mileage forms. If you enter mileage that totals over 100 miles driven, it's going to highlight yellow because we think it's unusual that you would drive that far. But it's possible, so it's only going to highlight yellow, just so that you double check it. Let's see. Forms cannot be submitted without a signature and a date, so make sure you sign that. And like I said, those cells will be highlighted red until you enter something there. So be sure you do that. And for Natalia and Augustina, you guys are used to getting those forms emailed to you weekly, but because the work for this project is a little more unusual, we'll be sending you just one template that you'll need to save every week. So you'll save as with your name and the Monday start date for that week, and then the next week you'll clear out all the data and save as with the following Monday. So for example, this week's timesheet I would have saved with my name and the file name and 2617 in the file name. And then for next week's timesheet, I would save as, clear out all the information in the form and save it with the file name, Amy LC 217, or I'm sorry, 21317, since Monday is the 13th. And please do not edit any formulas or add or delete any rows or columns or cells in those forms. They're pretty sensitive formulas that will do all the work for you as long as you don't edit them. Okay, so here's an example timesheet. So you'll enter your drive time, and again here it needs to be in chronological order, so you can't put the 17th first or you'll get a pop-up that tells you you can't do that. And I've already entered the project for you all the way down here because I don't think any of you are working on more than one project. So you'll enter the date and then the travel time from the drop down and your time here. And actually I'm going to go ahead and open a live timesheet document so that we can play with it. Oh, I think I've got it this time. Yeah, okay. Just so that I can show you some of the oddities you might see. Okay, so you can see the cell's red until I put my name in there. So let's see, today's the 10th, so I'll enter this as I'm entering my training information. So from the drop down, I've got a couple of options here. Survey administration is certainly going to be your most used, and travel time. And then admin time for Survey Gizmo and your time filling out your time, miles, and expenses. And then communication with SRM, that's any time spent on the phone or emailing us. Training is what we'll use now. And background in TB, I believe Betsy's emailed all of you about what time you can claim for your TB testing in LA, but most of the time you won't be using this unless directed by your project coordinator. And then for the hour you'll put in, let's see, we started at, for you guys that would have been 1 o'clock. And I'll show you here, if I enter PM in a way that it doesn't like, it gives me this little pop-up and says it's not valid. So if I put it in all caps, it's fine, or I can just use the drop down. And we'll probably be done by 3:30. But then if I try to put in 2:09 here and go back in time, it's going to come up with this pop-up that dates must be sequential. So you just have to go in chronological order. And it also doesn't like it if I try to select something with overlapping time. So say I put in 2 o'clock PM here. It's trying to let me know that row 8 here has time during the previous session because 2 o'clock is already captured in this window for that date. And then at the very bottom, at the very bottom you need to sign in date here, and it will sum your hours and shows your pay rate as well. And then file, save as with your name here, and then the month, date, and 2017. So like I said, for this timesheet it'll be 02/06/2017, and for next week 02/13/2017. Okay, and then I think the next one we'll look at a mileage form, and this is a little different than you're used to, but it's simpler because you guys don't need to worry about what type of travel it is since we're reimbursing all mileage this time around. So again, I just need to make sure my name is up here, the date, and it's going to be the same thing with the date. It doesn't like it to go out of order, so make sure you're entering in order. Odometer reading, you'll need to enter your actual odometer reading. It's one of those funny things with this project. And let's say I go 30 miles. It'll show my mileage driven here, and then at the very bottom it'll sum the total miles and then show me how much the reimbursement will be at the government rate. Again, it's red until I enter my signature and date. And I'll show you an example of if I had accidentally made a typo here and said I went real far, it's going to highlight yellow because maybe there's a case where we ask you to drive all the way up to Washington State or something and you do actually drive really far. It will let you submit like that, but it's going to highlight yellow just to draw your attention to it to double check it. And again, file, save as with your name and the Monday's start date in the week up there at the top. Okay. And let's expense reports. Let's see. So reimbursable expenses for this project include tolls and parking fees and any background check expenses if they're required by a school district where you're working. And your project coordinator will work with you on what is and is not reimbursable, what's required in your area. And also shipping supplies if you run out of FedEx materials. At most FedEx offices, you can get those materials for free, but if yours charges, make sure you keep a receipt and submit that on your expense report. All expenses must be submitted with an itemized receipt in order to be reimbursed, and unfortunately, credit card statements are not sufficient for our payroll. Here's an example of an expense form, and this looks exactly the same as you guys are used to. So you'll just enter the date, the item description in some way that matches the receipt so that when we receive it here, our accountant can look at it and kind of link it up. And then you'll choose the category here. You only have 3 options: travel, background, and TB, or shipping and supplies. And so for tolls and parking, you'll choose travel, enter the total amount on the receipt, and then the total to be reimbursed here. Sorry about that. And then it'll total these columns down here, and this total to be reimbursed is what will reflect on your expense check. So the reason it's divided out is in case you go for a background check and we've told you SRM can only reimburse up to $30 for your background check, say, but it ended up costing you more than that. We need the receipt to match this amount, but the total we can reimburse is that whatever limit we had set, which in this example is $30. So this would be the total to be reimbursed that would go in this column. And again, signature and date as always. And files, and you'll just save that with the date and send it in as you accrue them. Any questions on timesheets or payroll? I think you're all pretty familiar. If any questions pop up, feel free to email us or call.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Amy. It seems a little out of order here, but because you guys are special, you have these active consent requirements that some other sites don't have, and so we sort of tagged it on to the end here. So if you can put your head back into the survey day from 20 or so slides ago, Betsy's going to talk to you a little bit about what to do when students don't have parental consent to take the survey. You're on,
Okay,
Betsy.
thanks, Diane.
Sure.
Okay, great. So yes, as Diane has mentioned, and as I think at least a couple of you remaining here are aware, there are 20 schools in the study that have told us you can't survey our students without permission from their parents if they're under 18. So that it has created a bit of a challenge. But we learned this back in October, and what we have done since is SRM has learned of what students are under 18 in these schools and tried to contact the parents. And the way we've tried to contact them, we started by sending out a mailing with the permission form in it, saying what's happening, please return this permission form, here's a return envelope. Then we brought on callers and we started calling those parents saying, we mailed you, did you get our mail? And working through the lists like that. Then we got permission to text them an online link. So we started texting and emailing a link to an online permission form. And that gave us a big boost. About 300 parents hopped on and did it online, so that was great. We were trying to get about 2,000 to begin with. We also have been working with the schools. So we have been coordinating for the schools to pass out the forms and collect them back up. Natalia has been running around to schools all over the valley and the city picking up forms. So that, I just want to give you a little bit of behind the scenes. That's been happening since October for some of the schools in Los Angeles. The schools that are active consent site in your area are all the schools in San Fernando Valley and all the schools in Los Angeles, so 18 total schools. The only schools that you might go to that are not active consent are Magnolia, Savannah, and Western. So that's if you're going to the Anaheim schools. Those are not active consent sites, but otherwise you're working in active consent schools, adding a bit of a tricky layer. Okay. Whoops, I went one too far. There we go. Okay, so what we have done here from SRM is we're receiving consents from in many different ways, as you might gather now. Text, by photo, email attachment. We're pulling them from online. They're coming in from the mail. Schools are scanning them and FedExing them. So what we're doing is right before we ship the box of surveys to the school where you'll be arriving to hand out surveys, we're printing the master roster, and it's capturing at that time a snapshot of which parents have still not consented. That's the easiest way to put this. So on that master roster and on the session rosters for that school, so anywhere you see a student's name appear, there's a column in between the student's ID and their name that will tell you if there is no consent. And what that means is we just have not been able to reach that parent, and we cannot survey that student that day. You'll also see just a very few other statuses popping up on there, that like refusals that we've learned of. That's where a parent, we did reach them and they said no. You'll see some called opt-outs, and for those could be either the student, if they're over 18, or the parent getting a letter about the survey and calling the research team and basically saying, I don't wish to participate. So if they're opted out or refusal or there's no consent, we won't survey them. Those are pretty obvious. But we don't want to just let the no consent students go, because we have been trying in as many ways as we can think of to reach their parents since October, and we would really like to add them to our sample ultimately. So we're going to ask you to take an additional step while you're there face-to-face with a no consent student. And why we think you might be face-to-face with them is because many of the schools, as I mentioned earlier in response to Augustina's question, in many of the schools you'll be in the classroom. So those students will be your captive audience, even the ones whose parents we never reached. So you'll pass out surveys by using your roster in tandem really carefully, making sure that you're not giving a survey to a student who's not consented. And I should back up, because what we've done is printed surveys for all students, whether or not they've been consented. And we're mailing all those surveys to the school. The reason for that is because we, every single day, have new consents coming in. Some days not many at all, other days up to a dozen, but we don't want to miss the opportunity to survey a student who's consented later down the line. So make sure that you're looking at your roster while you're distributing the surveys, so that we don't get them into the hands of a student who has not been consented yet. There's ways that you might get updates for students who have received consent since the printing of the rosters. And I'll get into that in a moment, but I think I didn't quite finish my thought about you'll be in the classrooms, you'll have distributed to the students who at that time you understand to be okay to survey. Their parents were reached or they happen to be over 18. It doesn't matter to you. They just, so long as they don't have a no consent note next to their name on a roster that you have received. So we're asking you to give those students with the no consent note a consent form and ask them to take it home and bring it back to the school. So let me discuss that part first. Let's see. Okay, so the lead administrator in an active consent site should let the coordinator know we will be passing out fresh consent forms to the students who are not consented. We won't be allowed to survey them today. This might be something that your coordinator does not know. So it's good to let them know we won't survey these students. We never reached their parents. We're going to give them a new form if we meet them today. And ask that coordinator, what do they recommend is the best way to collect back those forms? You can volunteer yourself to return. Say, I could come back tomorrow if, and I could come back into these classrooms and poke my head in and ask the students, do they have them? I bet they may not go for that, but that's the kind of stars. Or they might say, have them return it to the Gear Up office, or have them return it to me, Cindy. So what we want you to do is when you're passing out the forms to those students listed as no consent, say to them, please bring this back to Cindy tomorrow. I'm going to come pick them up from her. Something like that. We just, we're kind of making a plea to the student, and we're trying to give them a very clear path to returning this document with a deadline so that we can survey them ultimately. We would really like to. Okay, so the lead should collect that information from the Gear Up coordinator and then share it with other survey administrators if they weren't present for that conversation. Okay. Oops. All right, sorry, I jumped ahead of my slides. So it's critical that you're referring to your roster while you're handing out surveys in these sites, which, as you can imagine, is going to probably slow you down. It's not as easy as just having a stack of labeled surveys in alphabetical order and handing them to students. You've got to have this second document that you're cross-referencing every single time. Yesterday was our first day in the field, and I heard from the lead, and she said that they had about 30 minutes before the session began, and they opened up the box at the school, and they were able to go through the master roster and pull out the student surveys that said no consent. That just made things go faster for them once they were in the classroom with the students. You may find you have that opportunity as well. A little bit of time to flag those surveys somehow with a Post-it, pull them aside, rubber band them, something to help yourself so you know, okay, these that I hold in this stack here belong to only consented students, so I can just pass them out. And then once I've passed them out and got them going with their survey, I can then go on to pass out consent forms to the students who don't have consent yet. So you're passing up that blank form out. Everybody should have received a packet of them in their survey administrator box. Those of you who work in Southern California, at least. And you'll see they have a little flyer stapled to the front. It's like a third of a sheet, and the flyer tells the parent how they can return the form. We're just trying to put all the possible information out there. So it says, please return this form either by texting a photo of it to this number, emailing a photo of it to this email, going online instead and completing it there, or taking it back to your child's high school. So those options are spelled out there. You're handing the form to the student. You're telling them, bring it back tomorrow. Either I'll be here or you'll give it to your Gear Up coordinator. Yes, okay. Any questions on everything I've said so far? I feel like I just kind of said a lot, not completely in order, so I want to make sure everybody's understanding. Okay, great. All clear. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind that's really important in these schools is if you have a student ad, which Diane has already talked about, so this is a student who is in a classroom. He tells you, he's supposed to participate, and you cannot find his name on your session roster, so then your next step is look on the master roster. Is he just in the wrong room? You still can't find him on the master roster. Then you need to determine if he can be added to the sample. And the verdict for this study is, in an active consent school, if that student is over 18, go ahead and add them to the sample as normal, as you normally would at any other school. If that student is under 18, they'll be excluded from the study. So we won't attempt to give them a consent and follow up with their information and such. We won't attempt to consent them for the survey, and clearly we cannot survey them that day because they're not consented and they're under 18. So don't worry about those students. They just won't be able to participate. So if you've captured a student who's over 18, he is going to graduate that year. He's in the Gear Up program. Follow the steps that you have laid out in your documents and binders and from this webinar to add that student by writing their name on the bottom of your roster. Oh, yes. You know what, I see this slide is now out of date due to our latest communication with the research team, because at one point we thought we would try to add the under 18s and later consent them, but we now won't. So I'm going to get off this slide so you don't see that little bullet, and we'll get it deleted. Okay, I mentioned that you're going to learn of newly consented students after the printing of your rosters, which I know sounds like a big headache, but I want to prepare you. I bet when you arrive on the site, like what happened yesterday, the Gear Up coordinator, who had been trying to help us collect consents for the past several weeks, she normally would scan them to me or FedEx them to me, but she went right up to the survey administrators and said, here's 2 new consent forms that I collected yesterday. So our survey administrators were the first to learn this information, and what they did is they took the forms, kept them, they went into their rosters and they struck out the words no consent next to that student's name. So essentially they checked in the consent, and they now were free to survey the student. And those consent forms should travel back to SRM in the next FedEx package that's shipped by the lead. So at SRM, we'll receive those consent forms, and we'll see eventually on your master roster that you struck out the words no consent, and we'll also get a completed survey for that student. So that'll be great. So it'll be a big score for us. You might also, let's see, did I miss anything? Okay, no. You will also learn of some freshly consented students from SRM. And what we want to do is try not to make this too complicated, but we also want to capitalize on the fact that there you are at the site. If we can communicate to you some of the newly consented students, you might be able to edit your roster and give them the surveys that we've already sent out with their names on them. So what we'll definitely do is we'll give you the names of all the newly consented students since the printing of the rosters before you go in for the makeup date, so you can include those students in your makeup plans. They'll be clearly consented by then. But we might also give you that information kind of a little bit earlier. We won't give it to you morning of, but you can kind of prepare yourself to see an email come through from your project coordinator stating the name of the school and listing a few student IDs saying these students are now consented. So wherever you are in the process with this school, please make a note that they are available to survey. So it could be before you're finished with the main session days and you just scoop them right in. It could be that you're already down to the end and you're doing makeups And so you just add them to the makeup pool and let your coordinator know once you're there on site that they need to be pooled for the survey. Oh, did it again. Okay, this is kind of reiterating what I just said. So when you return to the school and pick up new consent forms, or in any scenario where you learn of a newly consented student, but it's just a little too late to capture them in the classroom where you were with them, just add them to your makeups. We feel like that's our safety net there at the end. They'll just all filter into the makeup pool. So yeah, so long as you're following the steps where you're striking out the no consent, they're going to pop up on your radar when you're going through your master roster as these students are eligible for survey. I need to have a conversation with the Gear Up coordinator about when I will reach them. Okay, and I already said this second bullet here, that we'll be updating you. So again, that was a lot to take in here at the end of a long webinar, and it's a pretty important point because it's a very important piece. We really don't want to accidentally survey a student whose parent has not given us permission when we've been asked to gather it. So are there any questions about what that could look like? Okay, great. Well, there's one more thing I forgot to add. We're also including in the school box yet another list, and this list will be the student names. The list will be names of students who are not consented, just all together on one roster by themselves. And next to their name should be a phone number. What we would love for you to do, if your session allows for this, the setup of it, is when you are handing a form, a blank permission form to that student, if you can have that list with you and ask the student, say, this is the phone number we've been trying, we've been calling and texting. Is there a better phone number for your parent? And let them look at that phone number, and ideally they'll give you a new, better one, and write it down. We would really love to capture some new phone numbers for these students because there's a good chance that we can text their parents and get their online consent form that night if it's a new good phone number. So they might look at it and say, yeah, that's my home phone, here's my mom's cell phone, or something like that. Yesterday it seemed to work. It's hard to envision it from here, exactly what that will look like, because I know that it's a very busy time. You're trying to get surveys into the right hands, permission forms into other hands, get students going. But if there's a way to have them just review that phone number, give you a fresh one, send it back in your FedEx package to SRM, because it's likely that if you're sending it with that day's completes, that data should not match any complete survey because that student was not surveyed on account of not being consented. So you can pop it in that FedEx pack, and we will take it once it's pretty much complete. We'll take it here in Boulder and we'll just put it into our calling and texting pool, and we aim to just keep at our consent efforts until essentially the end of April. It's kind of like a secondary data collection here in addition to the surveys. It's its own study with 2,000 respondents. All right. Amy or Diane, anything to add to that big beast?
No, I think you hit that, and yeah, you were correct that those security envelopes back from your makeup time are in the school box. So.
Oh, great, thank you.
Amy, do you have anything? All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide then, which I think is just the final Q&A slide. It was a lot to take in. If you have some questions now we can talk about them. And you have our phone numbers and our email addresses. And you've been in touch with Betsy, and you can continue to ask questions that way. Any questions now about anything that we went over or anything in your binder or your essay box? All right, then I think we'll let you go. That was a good 2-hour session. We appreciate everybody's time, and wish you lots of luck and have a good time administering the survey. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's 2 hours instead of, whoops.